Hi, I'm Ed Hunt. Welcome to Hunt Outdoors. There's no fancy intro here, not a bunch of silliness. I'm coming to you from my den, my game room. I call it my game room because I have cards and stuff in here too, not just heads. And, I've been accused just recently on YouTube for being a brown and downer and the problem because I quantify that I want anybody to feel free to shoot whatever they want to shoot deer wise and to be the hunter they want to be. You know, I started out like everybody else. I was just happy to go to the woods and hunt. When I started deer hunting, when I was, I don't know, maybe 17, that would have been 45 years ago, 46 years ago this year. The thing about it was we didn't have deer in my home county. They just weren't here. They hadn't spread that wide yet. And the first arrivals into the county were just starting to happen at that time. We had to go 75 or 80 miles to the north to get into a huntable herd. And huntable herd means a herd that's got, you know, enough to see a track or scrape or rub. Because back then, if you saw a scrape or tracks or a rub, you were doing something. And if you were the guy that saw a whitetail deer, not just a buck, a deer down here in my home state, you were really getting it. You were getting it. You were doing something right. And if you were one of the lucky few to kill a whitetail buck, because back then that's all we could kill was one buck a year, then you knew something the rest didn't know. And or were the luckiest person walking. And I got mine real early in life, my first one, and I felt very lucky because I really didn't know what I was doing. And it just so happened, sorry, my buddy here is trying to get up on me. It just so happened that I got one. It was a nice 7 pointer. But over the years, not all the bucks I killed look like this. I started off as a brown and downer, as it were. Most of the guys that say that today aren't smart enough to realize that the first year I hunted whitetail deer, there was something like, I think in the whole state of Indiana, there was like 15 or 16,000 bucks killed in the whole state out of about 450,000 hunters. That was it. And then the next year it was like 17,000 and 18,000 and 20,000. And it got that way because we didn't shoot the does. We were allowed one buck a year. All weapons. Whatever weapon you got him, you got him. But you still had to buy a license for those weapons. So, yeah, I was a brown and downer. I know what it's like. And to this day, if there's a buck deer that makes me happy, I don't care how old he is or how big his rack is. I guess you could call me a brown and downer. So I'm going to shoot him. I am. It doesn't have to be a 180 right here or a 174 or 172. Doesn't have to be that. Doesn't have to be a 24-inch wide 10 pointer. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't even have to be 5.5, 6.5, 7.5 years old for me to kill it. My goal is to kill something 4.5 and older. And to get that here, our bucks take at least 4.5 years to get in excess of 200 pounds field dressed. Most of the deer I've been killing lately are 210, 220. Every once in a while, I'll pop one that's 230 plus field dressed. You're saying, how do you know that? Well, they used to have to weigh them on official scales, and I have an official scale out here that when I get a really big one, I'll crank it up. Last year it was 100. It was 218 pounds. That big buck I killed last year, big-bodied old buck, was 218 pounds field dressed. And I know that scale ain't off too far because I hung off of it and it said 232 with my duds on. So I know it's right there. So, people can argue this all they want, but I'm not one of those guys that fake things. My first antlered buck with a bow was this. There's a skull plate. It's old. It's broken in half. But this was him. That was it. My first bow buck. I was shooting a bow that most of you today would laugh at. It was a Pearson that was 54 or 56 inches axle to axle, simple round wheels, wood laminate limbs. And I killed this 6-pointer, and he walked out in front of me in a cornfield. And, I just felt lucky to have him. I mean, yeah, that's him. See, I broke his skull plate. He knocked him off the wall and it broke. But that was him. That's the story of my first bow buck. My first gun buck is right back over here. I was just a 17-year-old kid. That was a 7-pointer. But the thing about it was they were amazed that he field dressed at 225. They were freaking amazed. His rack should be way bigger than that. Well, back then we didn't know much about it and didn't know any better. But today, the true biologists and the true record keepers will tell you most fully mature deer are lucky to get over 140, 45 inches. They just are. These up here are not normal 5.5, 6.5-year-old bucks. You can grow them that old all the time, but only a small minority of them are going to get blossomed up and be those massive monsters, those Boone and Crockett's, those 200-plus inchers. That doesn't happen every day. Guys like Bill Winke and them guys, they only get a handful of them, and they kill most of their biggest deer on their first couple of years on a property. And then after that, it starts going downhill because those deer, whether anybody wants to accept it or not, is a freak. It's a freak deer. So I target mature bucks. That's just me for now. I'm not telling you to. Target the ones that want to make you happy. And I'll fight all day long with these guys online and in person about how they want to change the rules and take away your gun seasons and take away crossbow and shorten this season and shorten that season and limit. That's not going to give them one of these. It's not. They've probably already got these out there, but they don't know how to hunt them, or they're not patient enough, or the truth is some properties don't have these. Some properties have these. He's broke up, he'd been fighting, but that's what they've got. Or these right here. These. Not every place has something like that. This 5.5-year-old buck right here was one of our top bucks. You can see that. But he got busted. Didn't change me wanting to have him at 5.5, and it didn't change the outcome. It's still the same big, giant, mature buck standing underneath me. I hate it. Don't know where that part's at, but I got him. That's a trophy to me. This is old Freakazoid. I called him Freakazoid. I don't name deer, but this one got a name. This is a 4.5-year-old buck that experienced some sort of trauma. Look at the size of his skull plate. He experienced some sort of trauma at an early age. His rack was never any good. That satisfied me. Satisfy yourself. Hunt the maturest deer you've got on your property if that's what you want to do. If you don't and you want to shoot these, I'm proud of you. Go do it. You're making your goal. You're not affecting any other hunter but yourself. That's the way it should be. This shed right here, this old boy right here, this old boy is just a couple years old. This shed, and I mean that's a whale of a base. This buck right here was 3.5 when he dropped this. and he's still running around out there. He's one of those kind of freaky bucks now. He's one of these. Is he going to die? If he comes under me, he's going to. But he's gotten good at hiding. So get better at finding them than they are at hiding. Don't let them pattern you. You pattern them. And you can't pattern a buck 365 days a year. The best time to pattern bucks is right before the lockdown phase or the chase phase of the rut. They start making their trails and rubs. They're telling you where they are. Even if you don't have any pictures of them, but have seen them and seen them in the woods from the stand, and then all of a sudden you see scrapes and rubs, that's him. Don't be afraid to back up and try to figure out where you can ambush that deer. Ambush spots change from year to year. I show you pictures of my stands that are up right now. Those are food plot edge stands. None of them are burnt out. None of them. I've got 2 I'm going to move this year just because it's time. But they're not burnt out. They're just in really good spots. But when I find a buck that's moving in a specific way, I'll find a weakness in its armor and I'll set up on it. But the one thing I won't do that I suggest if you have enough property, a lot of you don't, and I understand it. I only hunt half my property. That's it. The other half is all sanctuary. And I can't stress enough for sanctuary because my bucks don't go nocturnal like crazy, only in the heat. Then after gun, things get stupid. But they still weren't totally nocturnal. They are comfortable because they have an area that they don't get bothered in. They will get up and move in the daylight a lot. The only reason, in early October, and every once in a while you'll get those 2 or 3 70-degree days in November, they go nocturnals because it's hot. These bucks are putting on all kinds of pounds or they're chasing does, and I'm telling you, they're not going to get up and move around and chase does or run a half mile from food source to bedding when it's 75 degrees outside, unless it's early in the season and it's been 70 degrees outside. Once that winter coat goes on and the fat goes on about week 2 or 3 of October, things get real slow real fast, especially if it's warm. Weather does matter. What they're not telling you in the movement studies is times of day. They tell you they get up. They get up and they move 5 or 10 yards, 20 yards, and they lay back down. They're not moving in a way that you can kill them. Sure, they're moving, but they're not moving the way they would if it was 45 or 50 degrees. And it was time to get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening and walk 300 or 400 yards, 200 yards to food. Because they'll do that if it's cool enough. Weather does matter. It does. Moonlight matters because we see it with our own eyes despite the studies. There is more movement at night with a full moon. I see it all the time. The trail cameras show it. Everything shows it. There's movement. It's not just up and feed. They're moving. They're freer to move. They see better. Despite the fact they have great eyes and can see in the dark, they see better with the bright moonlight. That means predators are easier to spot. That being said, get out and hunt your hunt. Continue to fight for your right to shoot whatever you want. Don't let the DNRs or the trophy groups take away your weapons of choice or any days that you get a hunt. If it's a regular season, an archery season or gun season or muzzleloader season, whatever, it's not going to miraculously make you have trophies if they cut your gun season in half. It's just not. What you'll find happens is guys will shoot bucks earlier in gun season to make sure they get it. That's what happens here when they started moving some seasons around and things. And then they started reducing. When they went to the 1 buck rule, you would have thought we had a 2 buck rule. And then they went to a 1 buck rule, which was what we have now, just like when I started. So all those years we had the 2 buck rule, 4,000 to 6,000 guys a year would shoot that second buck. That was it. Funny thing was, everybody was so convinced going to the 1 buck rule was going to lower the amount of kills drastically, by a third or half. It's comical, but the numbers are there. You can go back and look. The very first year of the 1 buck rule, our harvest went up by 3,000 for the year from the year before. And it's never really actually declined. It's continued up. It'll go up 2,000 or 3,000, drop 2,000 or 3,000, then go up 4,000, and then drop 1,000. It's gone up over the last 24 years. That's how long the 1 buck rule's been in. And we have less hunters. We've got half the hunters we had prior to 2000 in my state. So don't believe all the BS they feed you. All it causes when you start restricting is hunters to act out quicker and on something they might not have as if it's unrestricted. Fight your fight. Enjoy your hunting. And, this is my choice. And I've got a bunch of deer. A bunch. It's what I do, and that's one of my favorites. That buck right there has almost 14 inch, almost G2s that are split. But he was only about 14 inches, 13 and a half, 14 inches inside. Didn't matter to me. I mean, he's a mammoth old boy. Make it matter to you what you take. Enjoy your hunting. Enjoy the deer. Enjoy putting this stuff up on the walls. I did a thing. I've been doing these Euros, and I've got a box full of racks and things, and I'm just as proud of this, my first buck. That was a lot of years ago. And I know I'm not one of these guys that keep track. I don't know how many deer I've killed. I just don't. That's my little buddy, Gus. Say hi, Gus. Say hi. Yep. And, back in the day, we used to have these. These are tags. And we used to have to tag our deer, and they did away with that. But I don't know how many I've killed, and it doesn't matter. And these are here to honor them and for my enjoyment. And I still eat deer. And no, I never just killed for the food. It was just part of the experience. I was never so poor that that's what I had to do. I was close a few times. And yes, it did help, because there were some years back when I was browning down and they opened up the does. I shot a few does. I did. I shot a few does. Quite a few. It was just part of hunting to me. But as I matured as a hunter, it wasn't so much the number of deer I killed. It didn't matter. It became more about an age class of bucks or a certain number of inches of bucks. That's how it went. Now it's it's all about age. I want to kill one of the top 4 or 5 biggest bodied, oldest deer that are available to me on my hunting properties. That's what I want. That should be what your goal is too. I'm Ed Hunt from Hunt Outdoors. I hope I didn't bore you too much. Enjoy the video, and we'll be back with more.